What is up, Call of Duty fans? Fancy Shift here with the sweater game coming at you hard with the final day of breakdown from the CWL Pro League qualifiers. Of course, if you remember back to our video from yesterday, we laid out 8 of the teams that would secure their spots based on their positions in the pools, as well as, of course, the bottom 2 teams that would be eliminated from qualification. A couple of surprises there, and we would lay out what the bracket would look like to start things off for the winners bracket, just the first overall bracket. It's a double elimination bracket, so top side of the bracket, of course, the 3rd seeds in each of those pools would have buys. The 4th and 5th seeds would be fighting out more games to try to make their way into the Pro League. And before we dig into what the bracket looks like, I want to let you guys know that we will also be just briefly touching on what the divisions will look like at the very end of the video, as well as what to expect from further videos from myself now that the daily events are over. So make sure you stay tuned until the end to figure out how all of that goes. But I want to get to results first. Again, this was the bracket, starting things off in the winners bracket. Again, at the very top, Factor Evolution, Excelerate, Movie Star Riders, and Sween, Mindfreak, FaZe Black, Team Spacely, and Tainted Minds were all of those 4 through 5 seeds. And then, of course, as you see them, FaZe Clan, Overtime, G2 Esports, and Red Reserve would hold the 3 spots. And we would not be disappointed, as there were close games throughout the entirety of the day, and there were a lot of surprises. Excelerate would be able to survive against Factor Evolution. Honestly, this set should have been a 3-0, but Excelerate really didn't look like they were up to the task as far as getting into the swing of things. They would throw away the control as well as get kind of beat up on the search and destroy, and they would clinch out the last search and destroy, no problem. Team Sween, no problem with Movie Star Riders whatsoever. Mindfreak and FaZe Clan Black was a really good set, and honestly, FaZe Clan Black had a lot of opportunities to close things out versus Mindfreak, but they continued to let Mindfreak get back into the game. Mindfreak would punish, and they would move on. Spacely and Tainted Minds, as we said yesterday, pretty easy 3-0. So those teams, again, not eliminated yet. They would drop down to the losers bracket, but for my sanity of editing this video and for yours as far as following, we're just going to go through the winners bracket first, then we'll drop down to the losers bracket and talk about all the things that happened for the eliminations that would go on. So in the winners bracket, FaZe Clan, Excelerate Gaming, Overtime, and Sween, G2 Esports and Mindfreak, and Red Reserve and Team Spacely. Now, FaZe Clan and Excelerate, this should be an interesting one because FaZe Clan looked to have woken up after their performance from yesterday. They would have a really tall task going up against Excelerate. Overtime and Team Sween, these teams I honestly thought would be pretty well matched between one another. Team Sween, of course, having themselves kind of a rough day as they wouldn't be able to put themselves in a position to clinch just based off of pool play. They would wake up, obviously, after the Movie Star Riders game and look to do a little bit more work. G2 and Mindfreak should have been a close one. Wasn't that much of a close one. And then Red Reserve and Team Spacely, again, a little bit of wake-up things there. The results are, as you see them, Excelerate Gaming would take a thrilling 5-game set versus FaZe Clan. The fact of the matter is, Excelerate Gaming, they grew up on Search and Destroy. These guys grew up with game battles in their blood. They looked really good throughout all of their Search and Destroys throughout the entirety of the day. Such is also the case here against FaZe Clan. In FaZe Clan, again, there was just too many things going wrong for the squad. I don't know what it is exactly. Priesta didn't have as much of a pop-off day. Celium played well, but not incredible. Crowder just kind of sat back in the mediocrity that he was before. It just didn't look like this team was ready to go like they were yesterday. Maybe they didn't feel like their backs were up against the wall as much. Maybe they're just running out of gas. Maybe they just had a lucky day. Who knows? But they didn't look nearly as good. Overtime Esport would give a go at Team Sween, but it really wasn't all that close. Team Sween definitely showed up to play today as they would get themselves a 3-1 win. And then G2 Esports, kind of a rough start for G2. Not at all what you would have expected against Mindfreak, who looked vulnerable against FC Black. So Mindfreak would move on, put themselves within 1 win of getting into the Pro League. G2 would have to fight. And with FaZe Clan also being down and the result of our bottom game of Team Spacely beating Red Reserve, that would mean out of the 3 teams that, if you would have asked anybody at the beginning of the year, FaZe Clan, G2, Red Reserve, who makes it into the Pro League, you would probably say all 3. Well, the most that could have gotten through would be 2 out of the 3, if it even got to that point. As, of course, obviously, those teams would have to play up against each other, having all lost in the same round. Yikes, you don't like to see that. So as we go forward, Excelerate Gaming would take on Team Sween. Mindfreak would play Team Spacely, and this was all for the winners bracket qualifying spot. Coming out of the winners bracket, of course, you would lock in a spot there. And surprisingly, 2 3-0s. Like, Excelerate just turned up. Like, they looked, and it was a progression throughout the entire day, I think. for both of the teams that would make it through. Excelerate had a kind of a rough start versus Fact Revolution, kind of throwing away a set. They would clean up that gameplay and punish FaZe, who was not ready to play. And then they absolutely handled Team Sween at a 3-0 scoreline. They would qualify, and then as you already see it on the bottom, Team Spacely, kind of the same situation. They would 3-0 Tainted Minds, although it wasn't really convincing 3-0. They still would 3-0. And then they would kind of clean things up against Red Reserve, who put up a fight, but they didn't look quite on the same level playing field that Team Spacely was. And then they would absolutely handle Mindfreak. And you have to take a look at Mindfreak, because this would be the start of what we saw them from yesterday, from day 4. This squad had a potential of just winning essentially a game and getting into the Pro League off of qualifiers. They would then finish 4th because of the results of not being able to close out games. So Excelerate and Team Spacely, they move through, they look good, they're qualified and ready to join the World League, which will be starting in February 4th. Now down to the losers bracket. Again, the 3rd place matchup teams would come down into the teams that lost from round 1. So there was technically a round 1 in the bracket set up, but they were the losers teams against buys. They're just waiting for their opponents. It's not important. But Red Reserve will play up against Fact Revolution, Movie Star Riders and G2, Overtime Esport and FaZe Black, and then FaZe Clan and Tainted Minds. And Red Reserve, they looked like they woke up after that loss. They absolutely smacked Fact Revolution. Really wasn't that close of a set. How about this one, though? G2 Esports and Movie Star Riders would go 5 games. Movie Star Riders hasn't won a map, not a match, a map since day 1. And people on G2 at the end of their set were popping off, trying to taunt a little bit and talking back and forth, talking smack. And I was like, this is a team that just lost every single map for the last 3 days, and they almost threw away an elimination set against Movie Star Riders. I don't think you should be talking smack after that happens. Regardless, they move on to meet Red Reserve. You see it already in the bottom side. Overtime would take care of FaZe Clan Black. It was a good game, but Overtime was just on a different level slaying wise than FaZe Clan Black was. And then you see FaZe Clan Tainted Minds. Tainted Minds just not at the same level. Sorry about them. They're out. So now you look at Red Reserve, G2, Overtime, and FaZe. And you would think, again, you look at that top matchup like, goodness, one of these 2 teams has to go home. Like, this isn't even for the qualifying spot. This is just losers round 2 action. Red Reserve, G2, Overtime, FaZe, they both would end up going 5 total games, and they were super close matches all the way through. But G2 not able to clinch it out, would lose 3-2 in maps. And Overtime Esports would take care of FaZe Clan, putting all of their dreams down. Goodness gracious. Here's the thing about this Overtime Esports club. They're good. Whalers is good. Zeke is good. Natshe is good. Their whole team is good, like individually. But the thing that makes them special is the fact that they're effective with their specialists. They're very efficient with their score streak usage. And beyond that, they're just playing as a 5-man team. This isn't 4v4 anymore. You don't have the ability to just pop off individually nearly as much as you had in previous Call of Duties, because there's more potential for bait and switches. There's more potential for double challenges or trades at the least. And Overtime seems to understand that. They're doing a really good job of rotating around the map in pairs and letting one person sit in the middle, typically Whalers, who is incredible, by the way. I'm really impressed by him. And FaZe Clan just looked like they're trying to go off individual performance. You can see it multiple times. Priesta was overextending, trying to be the hero that he was yesterday. It wouldn't happen. Overtime Esport would clutch and move into the qualification round. And of course, our losers from the winners bracket would drop down. So Team Sween versus Red Reserve, a battle for EU. And then Mindfreak and Overtime, the French Phenoms versus APAC's Last Hope. Red Reserve would take care of Team Sween at a 3-1 scoreline. They were close games. There was a lot of back and forth in the hard points. Games getting to like 230 to 250. It was very, very close. Search and Destroys told a little bit of a different picture for Sween, but the biggest thing was the control. Red Reserve handles control. They've been playing it very well, mostly on the back end of Zero and Scraps, who have looked very, very, very good. And honestly, as you look forward, Banson really needs to pick it up. He had a pretty rough pools and a tournament today, but we'll talk more about that specifically later. Overtime versus Mindfreak. Mindfreak has had so many opportunities to close off their tournament and be a qualifier. They could have done it in pools. They could have done it in the winners bracket games if they just would have not lost composure, but they would lose their composure in all of those situations, and they would do it again here. This Overtime Esports squad is real. 3-1 scoreline there, as you've seen it, of course, but I want to just talk about it more in depth. This team's for real, all right? We'll talk more about it later, but I just want to let you know that this team is absolutely for real. I'll leave you one last thought at the end. Let's take a look at what our divisions look like. So our 16 teams, the 12 that qualified from here, plus our top 4, they would be split up in a snake fashion. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then all, of course, they would be placed off of map differentials, win-loss records, stuff like that is how it kind of snakes through. Division A, Optic Gaming, Luminosity, Midnight Esports, Evil Geniuses, UYU, Reciprocity, Team Spacely, and Red Reserve. Division B, United Splice, Team Envy, Enigma 6, 100 Thieves, Heretics, Excelerate Gaming, and Overtime Esport. And I know they brought this graphic up initially and everyone looked at Division A and said, Division A is stacked. You guys are crazy if you actually think that. Yes, Optic is a great team. Yes, Luminosity is a good team. Yes, Midnight Esports has the potential of being a great team. Evil Geniuses still has questions, I think, personally. I wouldn't be surprised to see them switch up some roles. Saints. Just gonna say it. UYU, yes, they showed up at this tournament, but yes, they have questions. They only went 4-2 in a pretty weak pool. Keep that in mind. They went 4-2, losing against the likes of an 0-3 to Evil Geniuses and a 2-3 to the Imperial. That can't happen in the Pro League, not at all. So I'm not sold on UYU yet. Reciprocity, same storyline. A 4-2 stat line for them, not super convincing, with losses to FaZe Clan, Black, and Team Divine. Yes, they beat Team Sween 3-0. Yes, they beat FaZe Clan 3-0, but like, is that really that notable? Will they be able to handle teams like Optic and Luminosity, or even Midnight? Big question marks. And it's not a guarantee they're going to be able to beat teams like Team Spacely or Red Reserve, who had who continue to have some struggles. Specifically, Red Reserve and Reciprocity on LAN have not been convincing yet at all. So I'm lost on how people think that Pool A is stacked. You take a look at Pool B, you're looking at the definitive number 2 in E United. Splice, who's at number 3 after a definitive loss to E United on Vegas land, but almost gave Optic a run for their guns. Team Envy, who absolutely slaughtered this entire tournament. They, of course, had a couple of 3-2 stat lines, but, you know, they woke up after being down 2-0 in one of them. Enigma 6 very well could be one of the best up-and-coming teams that we see this year, period. A lot of star potential. They're playing clean. It just comes down to will they be able to adapt against playing against those top 4 styles of teams. 100 Thieves is probably the weakest team here. And if you go off of record alone, they are one of the weakest teams here because they lost to Overtime. And if it wasn't for Slasher, that game versus Accelerate may not have been as close. You're also taking a look at Heretics. Out of the entirety of Pool C, 5 of the teams from Pool C are in the Pro League. So when you take a look at Overtime Esports and Spacely and say, but Shift, they only went 3-3 and they had to come through the losers bracket. So what? They had to play up against great teams. And for Overtime specifically, people still, I think, are looking at them and Accelerate and saying, well, these teams, you know, they just happened to get through by an easy bracket, or they caught the good teams in their pool on bad days. I call BS. I think these teams are just that good, flat out, especially Overtime. I think this team is absolutely clean when it comes to being able to play as a full-on team. Accelerate has some reining in to do. They get a little over-ambitious with the speed that they like to play the game at, but this Overtime team is absolutely for real. I'm kind of confused on that people think that they're not. Of course, Spacely going through the winner's bracket, Overtime to the loser's bracket, but again, they did everything they had to do, and they did it with rather convincing stat lines. Generally, I would say. So those are your divisions as we go. Again, like I mentioned, what we're going to be doing from here that we no longer have the Pro League games, the qualifier games to go over. I'm going to be talking about each of the divisions and videos separately and going over each of the teams specifically. I'm going to also, that's 2 videos right there. I'm also going to be doing a power rankings video, kind of ranking everybody together because we do have cross-play coming in to the World League this year. And then I'm going to be doing some casting with the Collegiate League, the CCL, and if I get a chance to, when I do the casts and I see some moments that are pretty cool to kind of analyze and break down, I'll bust them into the theater mode and go overhead, and we'll do some kind of on-screen drawing, a little bit of a shift school, I guess we'll call it, as far as when things go well, when things go bad, and what the costs or consequences, positive and negative, of those things can be. I would like to get some more casting things on top of the channel, but I know that those could be like an hour plus long, so it can be a little bit taxing for you guys to even consider clicking on. And if you're still watching at this point, I just want to give you guys a huge, profound thank you. I know YouTubers do this all the time, but intrinsically, the support that you guys give as far as recognizing the effort that I put into these videos and the appreciation and respect you have for that really does mean a lot to me. Things have just been personally kind of crazy for me. I know I don't put on that kind of a front all that often. It looks like everything's great and good and I'm having fun doing this. I do have fun doing this, but I have to say that your guys' comments really have kind of left a bright light in some of the darkness that can obviously cloud people when it comes to their real life situations. So thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate all of the support. Even though our channel isn't the biggest yet for Call of Duty, we hope to definitely get there, and we're going to do it together as a community. So if you're not a part of the Discord yet, we had a couple new people drop in today watching the games. We had a lot of fun. I would love to have you guys in my Discord just to kind of talk and just have some good times, maybe play some pubs together, you know, whatever. I'm a very personable guy. You don't have to call me sir or whatever. I know some of you guys are really polite and they say, excuse me, sir. You don't have to call me sir. I'm just Shift. All right. So thank you guys again for everything. It's been a pleasure. If this was your first time and you enjoyed the content, make sure you hit the sub button, ring that bell to get the notification of when my videos come live. And until next time, I hope that you keep holding it down. Later, bye-bye.